Good evening, everybody. There we go. There we go. Good evening, everybody. How you doing? I know you're used to our intro, and I am too. Kind of caught me off guard. We didn't have the intro tonight, but sometimes there is technical difficulties that happen. Internets are unstable sometimes, but it is okay because we're here and we're excited that you are here. Excuse me for the Real Money Show. Boy, this is live. That was awful, but here we go. So I'm so happy that you're here. You know how we do. Put in the chat where you are watching from, what city, what state. Let us know where you're watching from. And let me say something tonight. I want everyone who's watching, if you would do so, just put in one word that you're feeling today. One word that you're feeling. Charles, great to have you here. Put in one word that you're feeling today. Are you excited about? What are you excited about in terms of life? We are now in October. Can you believe it? We're in October of 2023. We've been through pandemics. We've been through high inflation. We are in the midst of a war. We've had almost government shutdowns. We've had all of this stuff going on. But yet tonight I'm encouraged. Yet tonight I'm excited. Yet tonight I'm just glad to be alive and to enjoy life. And so I just want, if you would, y'all been quiet on me tonight. Nobody's putting anything in the chat. I haven't seen anything yet. But let me know how you're feeling tonight. Let me know that one word that kind of encouraged you today. And I'm excited because your son is headed to Barcelona. Yeah, hard to get that out. It is a wonderful place. I was there about a year ago, and it is such a nice city. Make sure he goes by the church and visit the church. Hello, Alice Martin. There's my regulars coming in. Alice Martin, thank you for being here. Feeding the need for greater faith. Oh, I love that. Feeding the need for greater faith. Dr. Bonita Harris, how are you doing? Good to have you here. I don't know if you missed last week. You're going to have to go back and get the recording. We had one of your own from the Park Church that was our guest last week. And so you might want to check that out. I hope your mom is doing well and that she is also tuning in. And so as we're going into this last quarter, I was reflecting. I talked a little bit about this on the radio show. Is that where are we with our goals? I mean, where are we? I mean, so often we come into a new year, we have all these wonderful goals, and hopefully we're doing checkups, right? Hopefully we're doing checkups. Hopefully we're checking ourselves as we go and see how we are. Are we on pace? Do we need to adjust? There we go. Ruth Bell is in the house. Thank you for being here. By the way, I'm glad you mentioned Charlotte or mentioned Michelle. Michelle is traveling today. And so Michelle is away on her way to Houston for the Viral Networking Conference. And I got some exciting news for those of you who may have missed it last week that I will share here in just a minute. But I want you to just think and reflect on your goals for 2023. And really, we need to be starting to think about 2024. In the corporate world, when we're in the corporate world, you start putting those plans together well before the end of the year, right? And even before the fourth quarter. And so we should be doing the same thing personally. We should be doing an assessment of where I am, what did I accomplish, and maybe a little bit of self-analysis, right? Why I didn't reach some of the goals that I planned on. What goals do I want to have next year? What goals do I want to carry on? Kimberly, thank you for being here. Kimberly is so faithful. She's just about on every meeting that I do, as well as she gets to be in my Sunday school class, and she still shows up. Thank you, Kimberly. But and so Charles said he teaches a class on goal setting, on setting goals. And we often talk about simple goals, right? Keeping them simple goals, which makes simple, and you want to make sure that they're relevant, and you want to make sure that they're measurable and all these types of things. And so that's awesome that you're doing that. And so we want to keep goals and make them write them down. And we have for us a guest tonight, Miss Audrey Hipkins, and she's Ivy League educated, right? I believe MIT's in part of the Ivy League. If it ain't, I know it's one of the best schools in the nation, right? And she has an engineering degree from there, and it just reminds me of that study they did of Harvard graduates of 1950. And they went back and asked them how many, and it was only like a few percent that actually were really reaching their goals 40 years or whatever it was after graduation. And those who were really living out their goals, reaching their goals, and all that they in life had their goals written down. And not only did they have them written down, but they reviewed them 3 times a day. And so we can certainly pick some lessons up from that. So I just want to encourage you all to do that as we go into this fourth quarter of planning. And also on a financial standpoint as well. Of course, as you guys have saw on the news, we narrowly escaped a government shutdown, but it's only 45 days, right? And there's a whole lot going on. I haven't really had a chance to watch the news today. They're talking about removing the Speaker of the House, and there's a lot of political things going on. But there is some good news that came out. President Biden, rather, signed a new document in terms of giving some more student loan forgiveness. There's a couple of things that are in there that I think are very good in terms of one of the things that you can now apply for some forgiveness is that if you owe more than you borrowed, right? That's one of them, or there's five or six different things. So I encourage you all to go to the Department of Ed.gov and check those things out. So my announcement tonight for my co-host in her absence, Michelle, is that as you heard her say last week, Michelle is now an author. She's a co-author of a book, and the book is Purpose, People, and Profits. And as we know, Michelle always talks about turn your passion into profit. And so Michelle is one of the co-authors of the book, along with our good friend Tony Harris Taylor. The book will be released tomorrow. The book is released tomorrow. If you go to our private Facebook group, the Real Money Coach Community, I did put a link to that, and we'll try to have that link up here tonight before we close out. But Purpose, People, and Profits. And in there, Michelle shares her chapter. She shows her entrepreneur journey and why she's so passionate about helping people with their finances, helping businesses thrive, and that type of thing. So the book is released tomorrow, and it's on Amazon. And the move that we want you all to help participate with is we want to make this book a #1 bestseller tomorrow. And so if you go to Amazon and you buy the Kindle version of the book, you can buy the Kindle version for 99 cents. So it's 99 cents. You can buy the Kindle version of the book, and we want to just go there, support Michelle, support Tony Harris Taylor in this. And I know they're going to have a wonderful conference. But again, it's Purpose, People, and Profits. And the tagline, the subtitle is How Everyday Entrepreneurs Create Drastic Results. And as you know, Tony Harris Taylor is known as the networking queen, and she's all about getting drastic results. So again, we want to support Michelle and the other authors on that book. So with that, let me just say that I am excited about our guest tonight. She is Audrey Hipkins, and I was introduced to her by Marlon Smith, which many of you know Marlon or know of him as my business partner. And so Marlon introduced me to Audrey, and we were on a Zoom together. And I tell you, I was just so impressed by just her genuineness, and by her family legacy and how she shared that, and how you can really tell that that's a sense of pride, and not pride from the standpoint of being prideful or boastful, that type of thing, but just pride in the fact that of having generational wealth and that type of thing. And so, excuse me, got a little tickle, y'all. That's again, this is live TV. All right, or not TV, I guess Facebook, YouTube, whatever we call it, right? So I was just impressed by the story, and we're going to let her share some of that. And then Audrey is the co-founder of a wonderful organization, which is now a nonprofit called Onyx Black Wealth Collective. And so we're going to get a chance to hear a little bit about that as well. And so without any further ado, I am going to bring on screen with me Miss Audrey Hipkins.
Hi, Tony. How are you?
I'm well. How are you tonight?
I am. Oh, that's cute.
See, you get a standing ovation on the Real Money Coach show. How's that?
Oh, I love that.
Good. Well, it's a pleasure having you here. We had a great conversation. Well, we've had a couple great conversations.
Yes,
I guess over the last 6 weeks or so, however long it was that Marlon introduced us. And I was just, as I was saying before you came on, just really impressed by the family legacy. And really, Audrey, the reason that was so impressive to me is because we talk about it, right? And it's become a buzzword, and it's become like generational wealth. It becomes a buzzword. And actually, I had did some research, and I was looking for generational wealth, and finally found Chat GPT that gave me a definition of it that I liked. But I'm concerned that so many of us are talking about it, but really there's two things: is do we really know what it is, and have we seen great examples of it? Because so often it's so much easier for us to believe in something that we've seen, right? We all know the story of breaking the 3-minute mile or whatever that was, right? So until Bannister did it, no one thought it could be done. But then once they saw him do it, it's just time after time. It's nothing for someone to run a 3-minute mile. Not me, but it's nothing for someone to run a 3-minute mile now. And so when we see these examples of great families and creating generational wealth, I just like to share it with our audience. And so I say all that to say, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
So what I'd like to do first is just give you an opportunity to maybe tell the audience a little bit about you, your background, because you have quite an extensive background in technology and business and that type of thing. So if you wouldn't mind just spending a few minutes, just kind of bring us up to date on who Audrey Hipkins is.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you. Well, I am a retired corporate executive. I did 30 years in corporate America. My undergraduate degree was from MIT, computer science and electrical engineering. And actually, when I talk to youth groups, one thing I say, the first time I actually planned, right? Because I did, I wanted to go to MIT. I got into MIT. I got a job. I went where the wind blew me, got married. I had my 2 children, and I got divorced. First time I actually planned was, what am I going to do as a single mom with 2 kids? And I decided I would go and get an MBA from Duke, the Weekend Executive Program. And that's because I wanted to make sure I increased my earning potential and I had more options to take care of my kids. And so that actually was what put me on the path to becoming a C-suite executive. I managed a division of a publishing company for 10 years, and then I became chief product officer for that company, and I did all of their product development. It was a legal and regulatory company that was purchased by Bloomberg in 2012. And I stayed there for another year, didn't really appreciate the change in culture. And that's when I decided I'd retire. But in terms of how I got there, a lot of the emphasis on my family legacy
Mhm.
goes to my father, right? He was a mathematician back in the day. He was one of the first 8A companies. He really believed in building and strengthening the company. I mean, the Black community. He was one of the first people to join small business together and create a joint company credit union for
Mm.
small Black businesses that actually the banks attacked it because it was taking money from them, right? And it went all the way up through the courts. So definitely, I have that family legacy from that intergenerational wealth from my dad's side. But listening to you today, I don't always give my mom side of the
Mm.
family her props, right?
Come on,
And
mama.
so, okay, so my mom's side of the family, they bought land, shortly after slavery. We don't really know where they came from. The joke is maybe they knocked off master and got some silver, but they ended up in Virginia, right, with enough money to get some land. And that land is still in her family generations later.
Wow.
And so when my mother met my father, she had not gone to college, even though he was college educated, but she had gone to that little rural, schoolhouse down south. She was valedictorian. She had graduated at 16, and she was just always a good student. And so when I think a lot about the lessons I learned about money, those initial lessons of how to protect it, how to keep it, how to make sure you were spending it wisely, all came from my mom because
Wow.
my dad was out building a company, right? And so my mother would sit me down and say, I'm able to be a housewife because we spend the money wisely. We're in a neighborhood where both parents are usually working. They're working because they want a new car every 2 years. We drive our car for a long time. We furnish a house one room at a time because we want to buy good furniture and we're not trying to impress anyone. We don't spend money on clothes. We spend money on experiences. So at a young age, we would take a trip. But she says, don't get it twisted. We're taking the trip because you're wearing those Sears tough skin jeans and I'm making your dresses, right? So a lot of my attitude about how you spend a dollar really came from my mother. And then my father was how you take that money and really invest it in the community to create other businesses.
Well,
So,
that's a pretty awesome combination when you think about your parents and the fact and I remember and the one thing that you said when we did the radio interview is like learning to live below your means, right? That your parents taught you that. And so often we don't get taught that today. And and not to be, and it's not always a criticism in terms of, well, no one's teaching you to do that. Some families are just surviving, right? In this economy and some of the things, it's not that they are intentional, but the circumstances, or they just don't know. We can't teach what we don't know.
and I think that there has always been this push in the Black community for consumerism, right? It's
Absolutely.
important to look like you have money
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to having money. And what you end up learning, which in my case, I spent some of my formative years in the white side of DC, not the Black side, right? So when you were in this very middle class, upper middle class neighborhood, you saw plenty of people driving older cars.
Mm-hmm.
The status symbol in Martha's Vineyard growing up was how old was the car you were driving on the island. not
Mm.
how new the car was, right? So um, sometimes you're doing what you think rich is because you haven't been exposed to what that real mindset is,
The real mind.
right?
And
Yeah.
and so often one of the mentors is Dr. Frazier. He says, I'd rather have a paper bag with $5,000 in it than have a $5,000 Louis Vuitton bag with $100 in it, right?
Yeah,
So our goal is not to look like we're winning, but to actually win.
exactly.
And that's very interesting, as you mentioned about Martha's Vineyard, that the status symbol was not how new the car was, but how old it was.
How old it was.
And that's
And
the complete opposite of what we
the
normally.
complete opposite. And I teared up when that Buick Roadmaster broke down on the way home. It could not be salvaged, right? Because we had had that car a long time, right? So, yeah, a lot of memories.
A lot of memories. So you mentioned Martha's Vineyard, and I think I might have told you it's on my bucket list, right? It's on my bucket list. My wife and I said that is one trip that we're going to make, to spend some time on Martha's Vineyard. Tell me what it was like going there as a child, or it sounds like you may even spend some time growing up there. So what was that like?
Well, I would go there as a child, but what was interesting, I would spend time in Virginia, rural Virginia, on the farm where my mom grew up, right? So, and when I'm talking rural Virginia, I'm talking outhouse, well, wood burning stove, chickens in the yard, and
Okay,
like country, right? And
country.
then you would go to Martha's Vineyard, and honestly, in some ways, it wasn't that different, except there was indoor plumbing, right? It was very, it was very focused on nature, right? And people were there to relax, to unwind, to enjoy the surroundings, to spend time with their family, and to slow it down. So
Mm.
I really always thought of it as a child, as it was the country for people that lived up north, right? Who didn't have
Okay.
people down south, if that made sense as a child. That was kind of my opinion of it. Um, as times change, especially once Obama started coming,
Okay.
it became a very different thing. Because there were always, there's always been people with money in Martha's Vineyard, but there were always lots of, school teachers, people that could take the summer off to keep their kids there, just average working folk. And it was what you did with your kids during the summer to get them out the city. So once the Obama came, slowly but surely, it started becoming this place where people really wanted to be.
Okay.
And and if you love the vineyard, you also realize it's not sustainable, right? Because you used to maybe bring one car over for a house. Now everybody that's sharing a house is bringing their own car. So you have, too many cars, right? And you have a lot of events. I think Marlon will tell you at the end of it, he was exhausted, right? So it was almost the opposite. Like my father would go because he had been running a company and it was his time to decompress and unwind. So the last thing you would do is even pack a suit, right? And you wouldn't put on a watch because you were trying, like, you didn't want to keep track of time and you didn't want to dress up, right? You wanted to chill. And suddenly it's become this place where you go to white party after white party during the season, right?
Our folks love a white party. I mean,
They love a white party.
right.
And so it's gotten to the point where, my brother's up there now. We usually go off season
Okay.
because then it reminds us of what we're used to. We're biking, we're swimming. It's slow, it's beautiful, it's peaceful, and you go to get away from city life.
Well, and that was one of your suggestions to me, was to, when you go experience both and see, because we love to chill and relax and that type of thing. And so I want to talk a little bit, since we're talking Martha's Vineyard. One of the things that you share with me is your home on Martha's Vineyard, and just kind of tell us a little bit how many generations that home has been in your family?
So my great cousin bought the house in the 40s, and then her son ended up getting it from her in the mid 50s. And then my dad and his brother got it from him in the 70s. And then I own the house now. So it's been in our family for four generations.
This is
Been
great.
through a lot of wear and tear and upgrades, but it's, it's our family home, and we love it. And my children will tell you, if it, if something happens and it's dire straits, sell everything else, but don't sell the vineyard. So
Everything else could go, but this house
everything
on
else
the
can
vineyard.
go, right?
That's
So
awesome. Now, are there other families on the vineyards that have kind of similar stories to that? Do you know if there's many?
so we're in the kind of the historical black area. So like if you go out our backyard and cut across the neighbor's yard, you're at Adam Clayton Powell's house, the cottage
Mm,
that's the National African American Museum. They have a replica of his front porch, and that's still in the family. I want to say four generations later. You walk down another block, you have Coleman Corners. Those houses are still in the family. And she wrote a book, The Place My Heart Calls Home, to let people know her grandmother bought that house, and Jocelyn's in her 80s now, um, working as a domestic, cleaning houses on the vineyard. So she's like, she finds it upsetting that people feel everyone's rich on the island, because that is not, the case. And
right.
then you take another block, and you're at Shearer's Cottage, which is the original black guest house where people stayed in the late 1800s, and that's still family owned. So our neck of the woods, we have a lot of houses that have been in the family for generations, but we've also had turnover. And one of the main reasons, I used to, 20 years ago, like, how could they sell that house and not tell anyone? Well, now I know how, right? It takes a lot of money to maintain a second home if it hasn't
Mhm.
been passed down, appropriately, if it still has a note on it, if it needs a lot of work. You have to make a choice, right? You're either going to be tied to that house and trying to get it together and trying to keep it going, when maybe you want to experience the world. Like, you have to have a certain cash flow to be
Sure.
able to maintain a house as well as travel. And so, now I'm much more forgiving. And when I look back and see how some of those houses made it out of the family and into, other hands.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to what you were just talking about in terms of being great money management and those type of things, because that's certainly going to come into play in terms of if you're trying to maintain a second home and that type of thing. Um, so I just think that heritage is so great, and we often talk about it, especially when we see in our cities, gentrification and regenification and all these things that are going on. It's urban renewal all over again, right? In many cases, right? It's just got a
Yes.
new name, a
Just
new
a new
face.
name. Yes.
But it's
DC, they've systematically marched through neighborhood by neighborhood since I moved here. I didn't know if you know DC, but Georgetown was black and was turning when I moved here in the 60s. And you can just see, like, systematically neighborhood by neighborhood, to the point, as you know, we're no longer Chocolate City. And
right.
when I look at how many people I know firsthand that could not hold on to those houses,
Mm,
for reasons of reverse mortgages, or someone, they pray the minute they find that your house is, someone died, they're at your door sticking those flyers in there, right?
right, right.
And at the time, oh, it just looks like so much money, but you've never bought your own house before, some of these people. So they don't realize they sold that house. You can't buy another house in the city for
You
that.
can't
You
buy
could
it.
barely buy a
No.
house in the suburbs for that, right?
Right. It
So
looks
you
like
just,
a lot of money, but it really isn't. And
it
then
really,
and then of course, the other thing for our citizens who are on fixed incomes is that we're driving the property taxes up so high that makes it difficult for them as well.
That is so true. That is so true.
So
So, which is that a good segue into Onyx, right?
yeah, I think it is. I was kind of thinking that was a good segue into Onyx.
Yeah.
Unintentional, but it is a great segue into Onyx. So tell us a little bit about Onyx Wealth Collective, and what that organization, how it started, and a little bit of the background there.
Okay. Well, I have a girlfriend, Shauna Young, and when kind of COVID started, she was going through a career change, and she thought it would be just a really good idea to get a group of people together, since we were all housebound anyway, and just start talking about um, how to solve the Black wealth gap. Right? What did we think about it? And what's interesting with Shauna is she's a great networker, and her network just ended up being a phenomenal group of people, all ages, different professions, different regions of the country. So it started up four of us just talking and saying, what would we even do? And then we ended up having these biweekly conversations. And we really started off with, what does it even mean to be wealthy? And, and so the youngest person was 25 in the group, and the oldest person was 75. And it was really having that conversation about wealth means being free mentally, having mind space. So you can invest in your family, so you can invest in your community, so you can figure out what, God really put you here to do. So many people are just like on this, hamster wheel, right? Just going every day. You can't slow down and figure out what it is that's really important in life. Right. And so once we got that, and then even if you have money, if you don't have your health, if you don't have your spiritual self together, right? And if you're if you're having money just so you can have money, and you're not thinking about how to uplift and build the community, you're still not wealthy at the end of the day, right?
Still not
wealthy. And what we realized is there was so much that each generation could not only teach, like you think it's just necessarily older people that have something to give, but the learning goes both ways. So, even something as simple like, my father's generation was very focused on jobs. Yeah. And I was very focused on jobs. And, someone in their 20s is like, you seem to talk about jobs a lot, people just make money now, right? And I'm like, they're trying to make money. I'm like, well, and I realized, we were more like a career meant something. You were with a company a long time. It
Seniority
implied, mentorship was built into it. People were helping you up the path. There was all this stuff when I say job.
Right.
That she's like, it doesn't mean that anymore, Audrey.
Right. It's about getting a paycheck and so, but it's interesting because I did even write that down, because often when I have guests on here, I take notes, along the way. And, you mentioned, the youngest person being 75 or 25 to 75. And I just wrote down, multi-generational. And so often when we talk about generational wealth, we forget about the wisdom and different things that generational wealth could be. And you brought a new point out to me, because generational wealth can flow both ways, and generational wisdom can flow both ways. Very, very interesting.
No, that's very, very true. And so we have so much of the group, it is definitely flowing both ways. And so I think I told you this example on the radio show, right? But you could have the best financial plans in place, but let's say if your parents did it, you still don't know what it's like to have your parents die, and suddenly you have to deal with that. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I faced and was able to explain to an older couple, because really that generation, you did not talk about your business with your kids.
Right.
And I remember this very clearly. My father would have me come and sign a bunch of stuff, but
But he didn't
they
tell you
didn't
what it
show me
was.
the documents. They didn't tell me what it was. They didn't tell, so like when he passed, everyone was like, well, you've known what's been going on for 12 years. Your name's all over these documents. And I'm like, not really. Okay.
Right,
They
right.
had me sign and leave the room. And so just hearing that and realizing like how, I mean, I loved my dad, right? So in the midst of grief, you were trying to learn all of this and deal with it.
Hmm.
They realized they needed to change, right? Like there was no reason their daughter's, not a drug addict, right? Not a reason why you wouldn't be describing your business, right? It's really bright. And like that's old thinking that really doesn't serve us well. Because that's why so many people are losing. If you do have this chance to build up an estate, a lot of times it's lost the next generation because those conversations weren't had.
Because those conversations aren't taking place, and we want to protect this information, and this is and part of it is because they grew up that way, right? When conversations took place, you send the children out of the room. When you're talking about money, you're talking about these things, you close the door, you whisper, you do all these things instead of just being quite open and um with it, so that they learn. And I love what Lisa is putting in the chat here. She says generational wealth is also passing down skills such as being an electrician, plumber, seamstress, all these type of things too. Wisdom is enormous. So there's a lot to generational wealth beside the money piece.
That I
And
love that point, right? That's another example of how we lose wealth. We have so many small Black businesses that are successful, but they're like those solo or couple man shop. They're electricians, they're plumbers.
yeah,
And when they die, their kids don't, or when they retire, their children don't want to take it over. And, that's a business that could be sold if you had a solid, steady customer base, right?
right,
Or,
right.
but even not, why aren't we raising people that want to keep these trades going, right? So
Well, and
I
then
love that point.
my thing is this too: is even if the heirs of the business don't want to be a plumber, I don't want to be a plumber, I don't want to be an electrician. Well, I can still own the business.
Yes,
Just because I don't want to work in the business doesn't mean that I don't own the business, right? And
exactly.
we had a little conversation about entrepreneurship, and that never everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur. Some people really should probably stay away from entrepreneur because they not gonna do business right, right? And
Right.
but still, we can still own, you know. And it was interesting. It was a conversation I think Boyce Watkins was having, and the question was this: the question was, can you really be wealthy without being a business owner? And his view on it was you can't. He says you can't. And the premises of him saying that is, I'm not saying that you operate a business, but you're a business owner. How do you become a business owner? You can own the stock, you can own the company, you can own these things that will cause you to continue to have ongoing wealth without necessarily being a business operator. And sometimes I think we see business operator and business owner as one and the same, but they're not.
That's a really interesting point, right? Because my father was a business owner, I tend to think of when you own that business, the buck stops with you and you're running it,
Mhm.
as opposed to silent investors.
Yes.
A lot
Yeah.
of people can be, and I think what I would call an investor, you call a business owner, because
Yeah.
as long as
Yeah.
you own a piece of that business, right?
Right.
But we used to make it very clear silent meant you really don't do anything, but you put that check in there. You wait for it to bring it,
And you
unless
expect the
you got to
harvest.
be back. And
Right.
then you need to say something, right? So I think a lot of times, the terminology, you need to be invested in a business,
Yes.
right? Is the
Yeah.
point you're making. So even just stocks, mutual funds, things like that are still, you're owning a share
Right.
of a business,
Right.
right? And we should be owning more of our own businesses, right?
Absolutely, 100%,
Yes.
100%. And so let's we kind of touched on the Black Onyx Wealth Collective. I think Dante even has the website up, but tell us a little bit more about it. What's the mission? What do you guys what do you want to do?
So what we really want to do is create a group of people that are kind of the financial champions in their family. We know how many people's eyes glaze over when they talk about finances, right? But there's usually, if there can be one in each family that actually, knows how to do estate planning, knows how to work with a financial planner, knows how to find an expert if needed, develop that financial capability, which is a level above financial literacy, they can be the go-to person for their family. So then we can start having more good advice being given to people rather than cousin so and so telling you, right? So that's one thing we want to do, is create these family champions. And the way we plan to do that is by having this safe space to talk. We have a Sunday sessions, Wednesday wind down. We have different conversations for whether you're a novice, right? You haven't bought your first home. Maybe you haven't been filing your taxes, right? You don't even know what a budget is, all the way up to you're in your 70s and you've had a very successful professional life and you own multiple properties and your estate plan is done. You might be trying to find a group of like-minded people to do an investment and do affordable housing or do something that is really meaningful to you. And because we want to keep it somewhat the conversations close, intimate, and you build these relationships. So outside of the sessions, you can meet and have additional conversations. So the examples we give have all happened outside of the conversations, but the relationships were made in those sessions. We also have what we call like our author series. So when there's it's like author and expert, when a specific topic comes up that's relevant, we have a network that we can pull people together and really dig deep and get everyone's knowledge up to speed quickly. So an example of that is when the vaccine came out for COVID, at Tuskegee was on everyone's mind, right?
right.
But we were able to get one of the members was on the vaccine development team. So he came in and explained the science behind it. One of the people on the panel did emergency medicine for the state of Arkansas. So they were able to really say firsthand how it was devastating our community, right? So from these professionals hearing, this is the science, it is safe, I have seen this, I've made this decision, and it was hard for me to make this decision myself. As a group, we felt a lot more comfortable because I know I was going to wait a year and see how it went, right? But after that conversation, I had a very different, perspective. We had a group come in and talk about reparations, right? So Sandy Darity had written like the Bible of reparations, but then they had just won that case, I want to say there was one in Chicago and one in Long Beach. So those women actually came and talked to us. What was the rationale? How did they get it done? What are your first steps in trying to start, if that's a path that you think is valid for you? The most recent is the affirmative action case.
Okay.
And so we had this was an off the record conversation. So we didn't record it like some of the others, but we had, deans of admission from Harvard, from North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and a few other Ivy League schools to really talk about what this decision meant, what you need to tell your kids, how should we strategize as a people, should we continue the fight? And there was also, but if you don't want to continue that fight, what else should we be doing? And so someone really said there's a strategic plan for building up HBCUs, right? Like maybe we need to double down on that as another front to fight the battle, right? But then you also had because I'm telling you, that younger crowd was devastated. I was like, I see the pendulum swing back and forth in my lifetime a few times,
Right,
right? So they
right.
have the older people say, this just happens, right? This is the way the struggle has always been. It's it's a downturn, it will come back, right? But progress is still being made along the way. So
And that's where that wisdom comes in. And as even Dante was scrolling through, and I just saw the different generations, the young people, the older. It's just a beautiful thing. And I get the what comes to my mind is just this. I keep saying the word community, um, and having community and having a safe place, and probably it to me it appears to be a great resource for uh, for the members.
it is. So a recent example, someone's mother died unexpectedly and owned a lovely home, reverse mortgage. What do you do in that situation? And people were able to galvanize, right? Hey, let's call this a state attorney. Let's call this person. Let's call that. Let's strategize. Do you need someone maybe to pull some money together and get you a loan? And I mean, it turned out it had a good outcome, but the fact that you could get people so quickly to say, you got this issue, this issue, this issue. Let's talk to this person, this person, this person, right? That's
Wow.
just one example, right? Because, like I said, it's not just knowing what you need to do. You might know, oh, I need a state attorney. Do you know a good one? Can you find one? And so,
Right.
even though she's in this area, she was able to recommend someone in that state. You could recommend, we've had people recommend real estate agents in different states, brokers to get you the best mortgage, right? We've had people form investment clubs. So it's the network, the community, and it's a sense of trust because what we know is we're like minded because we're
Mhm.
not out to get rich individually. We're out to strengthen the Black community, and that's a slightly different focus.
Well, and it sounds like your membership is pretty much broad across the country.
It's broad across the country. While we are nonprofit now and we love support, our conversation, you can come and join a session and not pay anything, right? We are offering memberships as a way to sustain the work, but we really just want people that are interested in having these type of conversations and meeting other like-minded people, right?
So if
And
someone
realizing it's a group effort to make change, right? It's hard to do it individually.
and if someone wanted to become a member, they just go to your website and there's
And it's an application. They say
okay.
apply now, and you just tell us a little bit about yourself. Because, like I said, we're not looking for people that want to say sell to our members, right? Because we have all ranges, right? It's
Sure.
really about why do you want to be a part of this group?
And what are you bringing? What value are you
What
bringing? And
exactly? What can
you're
you
not
also
looking.
do
We're
to improve?
not looking for any wool to come and fleece the flock, right? We
Right,
want, yeah,
right.
absolutely. And can you share how much is the membership? What's your
Um, our base membership, I want to say is like 298 a year. So if you did an annual membership, but it's about $29 a month. And then, if you really are motivated, you can give us more. But like I said, you can, if you just want to check us out, you can attend the session, for free. Our information is free because we want it to flow as much as possible through the community. But we also know that there are people that can give and they've told
Mhm.
us they want to support the work.
So again, your primary sessions are on Wednesday.
They're 1 or 2 Wednesdays a month. It's a little of it varies, but usually we have 2 to 3 sessions a month, and that's a combination of a Wednesday and Sunday. And so Wednesdays usually a little bit more specialized.
Okay.
So and then the Sunday sessions usually have a broader appeal.
Well, that's awesome. And what time on Sundays and Wednesdays?
At 12 o'clock, so 12 to 1:30. So you got to get to church early. And
You gotta
and
go to the
Wednesdays
early
are
service. You gotta go to the early service. Got it. Got it.
right. And Wednesdays are usually 8 to 9, 9:30, depending on the subject. So our last Wednesday, we were talking about first time home ownership, but it was really the financial side. The first part in that series was really like working with a realtor. What do you look for? How do you know you have a good realtor? Like the whole process. And then we brought in a mortgage lender to really dive deeply into what they're looking for, starting with, they'll try to give you the biggest mortgage possible, but how do you know what you can afford, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
steps to do ahead of time. So, yeah.
And how large is the membership?
We have right now about 500 people on our list. So we went from 4 to 500 over those 3 years, just kind of word of mouth. And this is actually, I guess I'm doing the first public appeal on your show.
That's what I was going to say. Well, hey, listen, let's make this public appeal to become part of the Onyx Wealth Collective. I really love what you stand for in the education piece of it, and I think that's all great stuff. Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, so then, not that if you want to scroll or put into the chat the actual website that we're looking at, and people can go to that website. And if it's something that you are interested in, move to become a part of this movement, I think it's just a great cause to support. With your membership and that type of thing. And I agree with Lisa. Would love to get involved and just I think it's just a great community. So
Yeah.
as we come, I told you in the green room, I was like, this time goes by so fast.
I see that. I'm amazed, right?
Yeah, it's 9 o'clock, and we've had a great conversation. We've got a chance to kind of get to know you and your family, and certainly wanted to highlight the Onyx Black Wealth Collective. Encourage folks to get involved with that. So as we close out, are there any last words that you have for our audience today?
No, I just want to thank you so much for having me on your show and letting me do this is a dry run, right? Because as I talked about,
a dry run live, but yeah.
No, and I love what you're doing, right? I love I know you saw me drop into a couple of your things because I like to check people out. I'm old school, we're cautious, but I love the work that you're doing in the community as well. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, it takes all of us. I mean, it takes everything that we're doing, and one of the things that you said that I think is so important is you want people to come in that have the right place. And so I think that's hugely important. It will keep the integrity of the organization, right? Because it could go the other way,
Yeah.
And so I love that. So thank you for taking the time to be out. I'm sure that we are going to continue to communicate. As we close out, folks, I want to remind you again tomorrow, and we realize this. We realize that Michelle's book is available now if you go to Amazon, but we want to hit it tomorrow. We want that tomorrow to be the day to go out and get Purpose. And you're an author. I mean, you understand these marketing efforts and that type of thing. And so Purpose, People, and Profits tomorrow on Amazon. Go pick up a copy for 99 cents, and then make sure you get your hard copy. I'm a hard copy book guy too. I like to get my hard copy. I like to get my book in my hand, and so we want to support that. Thank you again, Audrey, and have a wonderful evening. And everyone, we'll see you back next week.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Okay. Bye-bye.